everybody, Courtney here with Smitty's Flybox. Just going to go through here and show you the steps to tying the Fat Albert as part of our intermediate fly tying box for the month of July. We'll go ahead and jump in here. The key to this fly really is your thread choice. So you want a flat thread, UTC 140 or 210 flat wax denier thread works really well here. This creates that good underbody here. So I've covered my hook shank with my thread. I've got my 2mm brown foam cut. That's the base color for the flies, for the color choices that we sent you. I cut that foam just a little bit wider than what the hook gap is. You can play around with that and how you like, however you like to cut it there, but I like to be a little bit wider than the hook gap. I'll cut a little piece of kind of an arrow point there for the foam to have something to tie into there so it doesn't create a lot of bulk on the hook shank. And I'm going to wrap my thread back just slightly before the bend here. We want to lift the foam and just double check that. So I'm not quite there here. I'm going to wrap back and tie into that foam a little bit more just to go ahead and so it doesn't have a funky space in the back of the fly there. So that's about where I want it right there. So it's just before the bend really starts to take a dive on that hook shank. Okay, and then next we're going to tie in our secondary color. For this video I did the avocado color, the avocado green, also 2mm. Again, I cut an arrow point with that foam, and that just makes it easier to tie in, lessens the bulk on the fly as well. And this is where we really start to see that thread underbody start to develop here. So you want to make sure you cover up all of your foam. Make sure there's no weird spaces in your thread wraps. You want to try to keep them tight together here, and this will create that nice, clean, smooth body on the underside of the fly. Okay, and then once we have our thread base laid down, we're going to go ahead and start building our segmentation on our body. So I go back, bring my thread back to where my foam's tied in at, and I'm going to start by creating a segmentation here on my second color of foam, on the green foam, and I'm going to create 3 segments. So the trick here is just making sure the segments are even, and I'm going to pull the foam up, advance my thread, and basically what I'm doing is I'm creating 3 segments on the back half of the hook. I'm going to go just a little bit beyond the halfway point here, about 2/3 of the way up, I guess it would be. And that's where I'm going to stretch my brown foam back up and over it. So the trick here with that green foam, if you cut it right, you should be able to see some of the green foam from the underside of the body. So that kind of helps create that profile of the Fat Albert. So make sure you cut your foam thick enough, usually about the same width as the hook gap. You want it a little bit skinnier than the brown foam. I'll show you why here in just a second. So you stretch the brown foam over, and then we're going to tie that down, cinch it down nice and tight. And just do be careful, if you do grab in too tight, it's going to break, cut your foam. So you can see on the underside there, the brown foam actually does overlap the green foam. So you want this to be able to see both colors of foam from the underside. So next, I've gone ahead and I've taken my avocado reptile rubber legs here. I've kept 2 strands together, they're stuck together, and I want to keep them that way. I just tied an overhand knot, and I'm going to go ahead and tie those in right to the side of the foam. I want that joint in that rubber leg to just go right to the end of where my brown foam is folded over. So I'm going to do that on both sides, tie those in right against the foam. And if you wanted to add a little bit, drop of glue here, or any glue that you like to use would be a good point, just to help secure those legs. And then we can go ahead and trim them. So what I do when I trim these legs is I just split the legs now, and I'll trim that top leg out, and then I trim my legs to size so they're just proportionate to the body of the fly. So if I'm tying on a smaller hook, obviously I'm going to make my legs a little bit shorter, and on this size 8 hook they're going to be a little bit longer. So you can do it however you feel as far as your preference goes. If you're using this on a lake or something, it might be good to keep them longer, so you can pop this through the water and get those legs to really move. And then on the back half of the legs, again, I'm just going to split them and then cut the top portion out, and then trim that bottom portion to size. Okay, now we're ready to tie in our indicator piece. And for this one, I'm using the near hair in chartreuse. You also have your poly yarn that we sent. You can also use egg yarn, Those are all good options to use as well for an indicator. So I'm just going to go ahead and tie this in. How I've measured the amount is really just up to how much I can see it on the water. So I use a little bit bigger clump so I can catch it when it's on the water. Don't have to use as much, but I typically try to cut it so it's about the thickness of the foam from looking at the top. And I'll just go ahead and tie that down with some nice secure wraps, and then we can go ahead and trim that off. I try to just leave it just barely past the foam, if not just even with it. Okay, and then at this point we're just going to go ahead and tie in our indicator foam on top. It matches our second color foam on the bottom. It's typically how the Fat Albert goes. And I like to tie that in so some of that foam is actually pressing down on my indicator yarn. And we'll secure that in with some wraps. And then we're going to pick everything up and bring our thread forward to just before the eye of the hook. I'm going to leave a little space right before the eye so I have an area to whip finish. And at this point here, I'm just going to fold my foam down and kind of hold it tight and kind of stretch it a little bit and hold it in place, and then bring my thread up and around and pull down on that far side and really tighten that down really well so it won't spin on you. And at this point, we're ready to tie in our front set of legs. Okay, I'll go ahead and trim the foam out of my way. I trim that straight across. You can trim your foam head however you want. I just like to trim it straight across there. And then we'll go ahead and tie in our second set of legs here. So with this one, I'm just using one strand on each side, and I'm just going to place that right on the side of the foam, just where I tied my back set in. Position those how you need, and then you can go ahead and tie in the far side as well, and then secure them with some more good wraps there with your bobbin, and that's it. And at that point, you're just going to trim your legs to size, try to match them for that so they fit the back legs as well. So now after this, we can go ahead and do our whip finish. So with the whip finish here, I just pick the foam head up a little, just pull it back a little bit, and I'll advance my thread forward just right to behind the eye there, and I'll be able to whip finish at that point. So as I tie this fly, as I first started tying it, getting used to how much thread and how much foam to use, it's just really easy if you just take it slow, just go nice and easy on it, and just check your fly. Turn your fly upside down, look at it, make sure the proportions are right, make sure it looks good. I've tied a lot of ugly ones, so if you just kind of go slow, you'll start to pick it up and figure out those proportions on the foam. I think that's the most challenging part on this fly actually. But it is a great fishing fly. It's a fun one to learn how to tie as well, and lots of different color combinations. So let us know how you do with it. Thanks guys.